Hello everyone, I just wanted to carry on with this a little tiny bit. I'm not going to go into it too much more now, but I thought it would be useful if we carried on looking at what motherboards do and all the different types of things that they have to hold. Because they look complicated, right? They look like these big pieces of mess that nobody understands, but everything's there for a reason, so let's see. So we got to here last time where we were talking about the BIOS and the CMOS battery. I'll do a video on the CMOS and the BIOS shortly, so don't worry too much about it. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of information that's stored on here on the motherboard in general for it to all work. Something simple like maybe the time and timing schedules and things like that. There could be things like, where do I go? How do I connect these things? So, okay, there's physical lines here. So you'll see on a chip, let me get rid of this. You'll see sometimes a picture of a CPU or a picture of something and some kind of computer, and it will probably look like this. You might get these things here that come out. Sometimes you will, and that's because of this here. If you can see here, they've actually got little dashes sort of thing coming out of that, and that's what these are representing. But sometimes you'll often see like this sort of thing, and you'll get loads of these buses, which is what they're called. This is a really dodgy drawing, by the way, I'm sorry. Yeah, you'll probably see things like that sort of drawing. Oh, sorry. And effectively, all these are called buses. So literally like a bus. And they're called buses because they carry things. They carry information. So when you're getting information from whatever is plugged into here, this might be some memory. This might be something with some calculation you want to do. So this might have 5 and 10 and 20. And this bus will basically, through binary, it'll carry the number into the CPU. And then the CPU then will do some calculation, and perhaps you then need to output it to the screen. So maybe your monitor is connected here, and then you see the pretty picture, and it says 50. It gives you the answer. I know the answer to that's not 50, but it gives you the idea anyway. So this is what's going on here, and we've got these buses everywhere. They're very, very small. I'm not sure if you can see them. It's better to actually turn this motherboard over. You can see them a lot better then. But the thing here is that perhaps it's useful for the CPU not to be able to talk to certain things straight away. So maybe I don't want the CPU. There's a line that goes like this, and it talks to this whatever device is in here. Maybe I don't want it at the start to talk to this device, and we'll go into this in the security side of things. But not only just for the security side of things, there's not really much point. It might not be doing anything at this stage. It's too early. We've just loaded up the computer. We need to load everything else up first before we start doing this. So perhaps this BIOS will physically be switching that off. So you can see there is a physical path here. We have a physical path that we can go down, but the BIOS, the motherboard, might be able to control whether it's electronically switched on or off. So, and that's effectively what's going on in these, as well as lots of other things. We will go through these in separate videos because it's quite in depth. So I just wanted to point them out to you. So what else do we have here? Well, we've spoken about the hard drives. Now notice we don't have any, these days we don't have any typical hard drive stuff left. So we actually connect things externally. And by typical hard drives, I mean not these fancy M2 slot things here. I mean the big hard drives we're all used to seeing. we will go again through hard drives later on. So how do I connect all of that sort of stuff? Well, actually, we haven't spoken about what all of these things are. So, yeah, these kind of things and these kind of things. There's loads of things to plug. You know, there's loads of pins. There's loads of connections. There's loads of stuff on this motherboard that looks weird. I'll go through what these things are as well shortly. But for now, if we just stick to these, well, let's say you've got a computer case, and you know just the thing that the actual computer looks like, the box as it were, the box that it comes in. We call this a tower, and again we'll go through a video of what towers do for you, and you might have literally the box of computer here, and on the front you'd used to have a CD drive and some, you probably have some lights, and up here you probably have some kind of ports, or somewhere down here you'll have some ports. It depends what it looks like, and by ports I mean USB slot. You might have a USB-C slot there. You might have I don't know, you might have some flashing lights on it. I know I would always have some flashing lights on. So these would be actually physical lights flashing, just because it looks cool. And you'd probably have a button to be able to control those lights. Well, somehow these buttons here need to be connected to the actual computer. They you know, when I put this USB stick into this slot here, how does that speak to the computer? Well, that will be connected to a cable actually, and this will be connected to a cable, and there'll be loads of cables from a tower that comes down. Now, I will get into these more in depth, and I'll show you exactly where they go. But for now, let's just say that all of these things go down, and they need to be attached to the motherboard. Well, most of them will be being attached here and here. And you might need to attach a couple of things there. They look like something like a fan controller, perhaps. So it's the fans on the case. So you might have a fan here, and this fan will have flashing lights again because, you know, it looks cool. So all of these flashing lights need to be controlled somehow, and you can connect those to the motherboard to be able to. We'll go through the fans and everything as well, don't worry too much about all of this, but you have to connect them to the motherboard, so the motherboard then can control and synchronize that this flashes the same color as this at the same time. You can even have it so that the motherboard will figure out how hot the CPU is, and if it gets too hot, if the CPU gets too hot, you can actually get these to start shining red. So you're physically aware, you can physically see that the CPU is too hot. You can do something about it then. Maybe you want to go into some software and cool it down, or switch your computer off for a while or something like that. There's loads of things that you can do with this, but it's physically aware, and when it cools down, perhaps that's when you want this to go green again. You know, it's quite cool. Like, I get a bit excited about this stuff. This is why I love computers. It's just for the lights, to be honest. And yeah, so that's effectively what all of these random ports are. That's what they're doing. You know, there's lots of different things. There's some probably USB type things going on there. So I'd need to connect probably that one to the USB port on the computer that I was telling you about. So let's say you'd have one there, and your power. You know, the button, the power button, the on and off button on your actual computer needs to be plugged in, right? It needs to be plugged in somewhere. You need to tell the computer to plug it in. On here, I'm not sure. Sometimes motherboards have got an on and off button, to be honest. So when you're testing it, that looks like it's probably it. I'm not too sure though. Actually, I might be very, very mistaken there. But you sometimes have a physical button for start, because when you're testing it before you actually boot a computer up, you might not have a screen connected. It might not be connected to a tower yet properly. You might just be doing it in the interim. So, you know, you want to just be able to press the button, and sometimes if they're very useful things, Trying to look here for one. I can't see it. I can't see it directly. But somehow, when I switch this computer on, there's some motherboards will give you a error number, and we'll go through error numbers again when we're completely building a computer. But it'll have a little digital display here, and it'll change. Maybe it'll change from E6 to AA to, I don't know, 01. I'm using these numbers because I've built and these codes have come up before. It means, I don't know. I know one time, for example, an error code come up that basically meant there was something wrong with the CPU. And if you can see this little bar here, this little bar basically, and this here, this lifts up, and if you lift that up, it'll open this case, and then you can slot your CPU in, and you'll see loads of these holes here, so you can obviously slot the CPU in. And again, we'll go through this, don't worry, we'll build a computer together. And when we can slot this in, it's okay to open this and then close it down, and you should then leave it closed down. Well, I remember one time I forgot to actually do that, and I just slotted it in straight away, so an error came up, right? So they're quite useful things. It tells you what you're doing wrong and right. I completely forgot. That was a very silly mistake. But anyway, I think that's enough for the general ideas of. Oh, the one last thing is that all of these big ports here are actually for power. So that looks to me like the motherboard power, and there'll be some other power. I can't see. Oh yeah, there it is. That'll be the power for probably the CPU, and you might get some other power things. These are SATAs, so these are USB again ports. But the other peripherals, it doesn't matter too much, and we'll go into a couple more things later on anyway. I just want to end the video there. It's getting a bit long.